Today, I sort of want to recap my thoughts on my appearance on Dave Lee's podcast. Pretty controversial episode there, but first, I just wanted to mention ARK K has been buying a lot. ARK as a whole has been buying a lot of Palantir. We see a buy just yesterday of over 500,000 shares, which is around 0.07% of the ETF. So ARK Invest buying back in heavily over the last few weeks, and we have seen that in their trade confirmations. Now I want to get into the reason for this video, which is sort of my reaction to the response to my appearance on Dave Lee's channel. And I think a lot of the criticism is warranted, some of it is not. I think the video as a whole, I'm assuming everyone has seen it by now, is pretty fair. Sure, I could have done a lot better. I was definitely nervous to, of course, be on a channel that large, speaking to so many people. And I think the problem really comes down to, as it came across, Palantir being such a difficult idea as a company to really describe to an audience that may not have heard or know about it before. So part of the problem, and Dave fixed this by changing the title of the video to Overview of Palantir's Business Models away from Bull Case on Palantir, is you have a couple different camps of viewers. Those that know me and my work with Palantir on this channel, those that don't know me or my work with Palantir but are invested in Palantir and have a background on the company and some context, and also the final group, no context on the company, just interested in this idea of being the most important software company in the world. So I think my viewers were sort of understanding of my perspective, know who I am and what I do, and weren't expecting any sort of brilliant revelations having worked with the software or anything like that. Of course, no one, even Palantir themselves, have been really able to explain the software in a way that everyone can understand. There are always people that say they don't get Palantir. So I don't know why everyone was expecting that I would be able to crack the code on that. I think I did a pretty good job, spent a while making the presentation, but was not able to please everyone in that regard. And then there's the people that are aware of Palantir, but sort of thought I was just having a fluff presentation. I think I actually did a pretty good job, and I'm not just patting myself on the back, but I really do think the key elements that I outlined were important in the sense that they identify Palantir's sort of structural advantage in the way that they operate, being the product offering, the macro alignment, sort of the thematic reason to invest in Palantir, the network effects, the culture generated by stock-based compensation, and a long-term focus, and the growth by design as they are sort of acquiring clients, and then of course the future optionality. So I think I did a good job identifying all of that, but the real problem came into play when the questions were asked by Dave. So I did not have these questions ahead of time, and I totally get why you wouldn't want to provide a guest with questions, but it's really difficult for me to sort of answer these questions off the top of my head perfectly. Now, I answered the questions, some of them I didn't do so well on, and I completely understand that, so I wanted to sort of address them here. So the first question Dave asked was, why'd you get it, or how'd you get interested in Palantir? What about the company stuck out to you where you're dedicating a whole YouTube channel? So I think this was sort of the first question Dave asked, and really a terrible answer from me, so I wanted to sort of address this. My response that I gave was more so my presence on YouTube, not my investment thesis on a certain company. My presence on YouTube shifted from a more general investment channel to concentrate down to Palantir. What that came across as to the viewers is that I was just hunting for views and found views with Palantir, whereas what I should have communicated was when Palantir went public, had the ability to buy into the company at the direct listing. And so my research was really picking up. And while Tesla, as I mentioned, has all of these great retail researchers already going for the business, there wasn't, or for the stock, I should say, there wasn't really that community, especially when Palantir had just gone public. So I saw a way to, while with other companies, I could just observe and actually take in and consume content from other creators. There was not that for Palantir. I believe I was one of the first consistent content creators for Palantir, even before Tom Nash got involved. I remember that. And anyway, what I was trying to say is my mechanism for the YouTube channel is more so my ability to be enticed and inspired to research a company and dig deep, and not because I see immediate monetary value there. In fact, the YouTube channel is really a labor of love in that regard. So hopefully that cleans things up, at least on that first question. And then Dave got into this sort of discussion on Snowflake and if Palantir is a consultancy and all of that, and sort of the differences there. But what I wanted to point out, again, I didn't answer that too well, is actually that I believe I've seen this officially from Palantir. I couldn't pull it up, but Snowflake and Palantir actually play together in a sense, and they can integrate. So that really sort of highlights the higher level view, which is Palantir is a full stack data software platform for these enterprises where it essentially solves your data needs on a full stack level. And Snowflake is actually just one of those small areas, and Palantir, sure, you could probably get away with Snowflake on some things. You might want to check out my recent sort of interview live stream with actually CyberFam for more on this Snowflake discussion. But what I was trying to get at, and what I did not get across, is that Snowflake and Palantir are addressing fundamentally different perspectives and approaches to this whole data problem. Palantir going for a much larger scope software for the enterprise. So that's what I wanted to reiterate there. And then on the consultancy, once again, I cleared that up in the CyberFam live stream on my channel, which came right after Dave's thing went live, but I've got a lot more cleaning up to do here. So then we talked about stock-based compensation, and one of my main issues just as a whole for the interview is I should have had a notepad right next to me, because I was having all of these thoughts and they were just disappearing right from my head, because Dave does a great job, especially as an interviewer, but also furthering the discussion on his end. So he was saying all of these things. I didn't have a chance to jump in, and of course I forgot them. So what I wanted to mention on stock-based compensation, and the reason my sort of dialogue on stock-based compensation sounded so bad, is because I was missing this key element, which was a sort of example and similarity to Tesla, because Dave's, of course, channel is mainly Tesla investors, because that's what he focuses on the most. So what I was going to draw a parallel to is Elon Musk talking about, I forget what podcast it was on, but making the pie bigger. So he talks about making the pie bigger versus eating someone else's part of the pie. So in this case, relating that to stock-based compensation, we have this idea of, if you are given a slice of the pie, a small slice of the pie at its existing size, you are incentivized to make the pie bigger, to grow the company, to make it more profitable, to make it a better company, help in all aspects of the business. This is the main reason for stock compensation. No rocket science here, but I wanted to sort of reiterate what Dave was saying, which is this is the long-term view, and you really want to incentivize the ownership. It's not just about getting a payday in the pay cycle, right? It's about this more long-term, grow the pie for everyone, grow the pie for the shareholders type of deal, which when you have stock compensation, you're actually issuing shares. So everyone else's, if you think about this from a shareholder point of view, is actually getting diluted. And I know Palantir sort of backs in the dilution already, where they already did it for the offering, but I need to check on that if that's for its entirety or what, because I'm not sure if that's always going to be the case. But anyway, at a holistic point of view, we have the stock-based compensation diluting shareholders. So our slice of the pie, assuming we are not buying more shares, is getting smaller. If Palantir Palantir employees are working hard to expand the pie, hopefully there is a counteracting force, and ultimately what you are most hoping for is the pie to get bigger than your slice getting smaller. So there is actually a net benefit in the change of the size of your ownership in a dollar perspective. So just wanted to mention that. I think Dave has a great sort of perspective on the long-term compensation. He mentioned that, and I'm not going to reiterate everything there. And then he talked about this B2C eventuality, as I had said it, and he said in his opinion it's very hard for an enterprise like Oracle or IBM to really focus on sort of business to consumer, as I had put it, software, and if it's even possible for them. And since we've seen no indication, as I mentioned, from Palantir management to do this, we know their focus is on Foundry and Gotham. Why should this be considered part of the master plan, since no one's ever heard anything on this? So again, I mentioned this with Cyberfam, who is a tech specialist, and we talked about that idea. But basically, that is my thesis on Palantir. Not that it needs to happen for the company to be successful, very, very far from it. But basically, if we're developing all of this software as a company for Palantir, there could be great uses for it and from it. And more so, when I think B2C, I'm not as much thinking anymore, because I've realized, even over the last few months before this Dave thing, that the B2C, not something that needs to happen in the next 10 years, or perhaps we could say next 8 years. Like maybe this happens towards the end of the decade or so. But anyway, what I really want as a B2C product is, as Dave mentioned, this whole idea of not being able to just take the product from the web, download it, install it on your computer, and run it for your small business. So that's what I'm thinking. Of course, that is B2B, technically speaking, business to business, but I think that would be naturally a much more of a progression from a business enterprise to another large enterprise, such as any company Palantir is working with today. And if they're able to scale down Foundry for Builders, make it much more of a sort of consumer product where a sole proprietor could actually use it for their business, I think that would really go as far as I'm hoping for them to essentially move down market, get essentially mainstream in their branding. And well, it's not for the branding, it's for the revenue generation, where they charge less but are going much wider to as many small businesses as they can for their data needs. So I wanted to talk about that. And now we had Dave asking about Alex Karp giving any mega long-term concrete vision, and how a lot of, well, he mentioned the example of Tesla and Elon Musk. I kind of refuted a bit, saying it's a lot harder for Palantir with a lot of this confidential information on the government side to be giving a long-term vision. I know he was asking, like, is this out there today? I think it's a bit of an unfair question for me. I don't have any inside information on a long-term vision aside from the 30% revenue growth, as Dave had mentioned. But what I wanted to say on that is, this is sort of the progression, the optionality that I've been looking for, is business to government, business to business, business to business to consumer, if that is potentially anything meaningful there. But then again, business to consumer or business to very small, any business in the world, download it and get going. So that's sort of the long-term vision as I see it. It would be great to have sort of any sort of reiteration from management, but I think that will certainly come with time. I mentioned how, I know, it took Tesla a little while to sort of put out their long-term vision. Definitely a totally different company in terms of what they are providing the world. But anyway, then we had Dave asking about Alex Karp being very principled, and sort of we have this geopolitical mission for the government side, this global changing situation, and the possible decline of Western democracies, the rise of more autocratic regimes, and the Western countries not being equipped with the right, best software, and it could be a winner takes all, as he was saying, sort of scenario. So anyway, he said, what is the main thing of why Palantir is doing the whole business opportunity on the commercial side? So this is a point I had missed. And this is probably the most important point of the video, because it was a very astute question by Dave, a very, very good question, one that I just didn't have right in the moment an answer to. So now, sort of looking back at it, some thoughts from me. So two main things. The first of which is Palantir talking about, and Alex has said this before, saving jobs, and more so preserving jobs. Or actually, it's the same thing, I guess. So instead of two things, just one thing. This mention of Palantir being a symbiosis for humans and artificial intelligence, their whole system, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, their operating system for the modern enterprise. So instead of their operating system replacing employees, it actually empowers them. We have workers on the factory lines, for instance. I think they talked about Chrysler at one point, being able to use Palantir software to really improve themselves as employees, make them better, and make them irreplaceable for the organization, because they are doing work that a PhD, sort of any top level computer engineer would formally be needed for to actually make this work. And they're doing work that also, because of the power of Palantir's network effects, scales throughout the entire organization. So anyway, we're talking about this symbiosis at a basic level, not general artificial intelligence or anything like Elon would be talking about with Neuralink or OpenAI, not any of that, but a more basic, a less of a terrifying outcome, but more of a real world today issue, which is we're going to empower employees of some of the largest companies to make their work better and improve their work of these Western aligned companies. And we're going to see what we can do to preserve jobs. And I think it's a great thing. And I love what Palantir is doing there. I'm really disappointed that I forgot to mention that. So then Dave got into the valuation, but this video is getting long enough as it is. I'm going to save that for another video. But basically he said conservatively a 2x from today to 2025, I think, from the stock price with multiples and everything, more aggressively a 4 or higher times today's current price. But what I should have mentioned was Cathie Wood and ARK Invest's outlook, which is now a quadrupling over the next 5 years, which is 4 times all of their stocks. Or actually, I think it's not 4 times, it's 40% over the next 5 years, which 40% to the fifth power is actually 5 times. So around 4 to 5 times they're expecting all of their stocks at a minimum to do. So whether or not you believe Cathie Wood, she has been significantly under fire lately. But anyway, I wanted to mention that we have ARK Invest buying heavily into Palantir, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, sort of recovering some of the shares that they sold before. And they believe there is significant upside for Palantir ahead. So while I don't have a model at this point, I will be working on one. That is what I look to today. So I got a message from James here with some really important insights on some more technical stuff that I had missed, and I just want to bring this to your attention. So it's in Snowflake's benefit to make the lift as minimal as possible and let the clients run with it, and since their business model is usage-based and Palantir doesn't work like this. Yes, Snowflake does automation and AI insights, but never forget that their business model relies on usage. Everything they offer ties into getting more use. How are clients empowered using Snowflake without running the meter? Okay, very interesting. Then we have regarding Palantir as a consultancy in sending forward deployed engineers. Palantir in their official S1 filing states that they want a small unit to be embedded with clients. We've heard this story in a different light, developers versus their bosses. So let's go on here. There is a communication gap akin to the astronomer astronaut. Palantir solves for this by hiring the right type of person to be a forward deployed engineer, to be embedded with the clients, wear their shoes, empathize with their problems. Only then can custom solutions to help their clients do the best work be realized. Okay, you can't make that happen with a SaaS model. Likewise, a consultancy model is built on the foundation of having your clients hooked up on your services. Palantir purposefully loses money, I mentioned that, on the early phases because their focus is on empowering the client via orchestration and optimization. So this is what I was trying to say in my response to Dave, but sort of lost my train of thought. So they don't take the SaaS usage-based approach, and they don't take the consultancy or the highest approach. As a platform infrastructure, they have to let their clients do the work and succeed by setting up the forward deployed engineers to give them solutions they otherwise wouldn't be able to build on their own or buy elsewhere. So thank you, James, for the clarification here, and you're sending your notes along. So that will do it for this video. And yeah, hopefully this sort of recap was helpful, at least in some regard. So thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.